My grandfather used to tell me tales of the war, you know, and when he went through the war. I remember one time that he told me especially because he taught me very carefully never to take anything that didn't belong to you. Now, but he said they was walking in, he and another soldier, after when they was discharged. You know, when the war was over, they just turned them loose and they got home the best way they could. And he said he was so hungry they'd been 2 days without anything to eat, and they came to a widow woman's house to spend the night. And this story especially impressed me because he stole. And he said that she told him she could give them a place to sleep, but that she couldn't give them anything to eat because she barely had food for her and the children, and she just didn't know what she was going to do and what little bread meal that she had give out. And they told her that's fine if she just give them a place to lay down and rest. And so he said that she put them in a back bedroom and had a high four-poster beds, and said it was a nice clean bed, so they washed up best they could and went to bed. And said in the night, this man said, "Lafayette, do you like peanuts?" And he said, "No, I never could eat peanuts. I can't stand them." Though he grew up in Tennessee where they grew peanut. He said, "I don't want any goobers." And he said, "Well, here's a bonnet full hanging here." And he said, he turned over and he said, "Well, pass them." And he said they ate that. He knew the old lady had them in there for seed, you know. It was a big old split bonnet, and she had them hanging on the... And he said they eat all that old woman's seed peanuts up. And
that stayed with you.
That stayed with me because he had took something that didn't belong to him. And I'd ask him if that wasn't stealing, and he said, well, he guessed so. But he said when anybody gets hungry enough, he said they'll take food wherever they can find it. He said there's none of us strong enough.
I was at grandfather's house up on Mud Creek when he died, but I was just 2 years old, and I don't remember him, you know. But grandmother used to come and live with us after he died say a whole winter's time, you know, and she told me a lot of things about it. But grandmother said one time that some Union soldiers came there and they were taking everything, you know. And one young Yankee soldier was out grabbing some Irish potatoes in the garden. She went out there and she was very religious. She heard that battle pilot now, but she walked, my grandmother said she walked in the yard, wringing her hands, crying and praying, you know, because she figured some of the boys were in that battle, which they were. You know, some of them were just her stepsons, you know. And so that young soldier was digging the potatoes. He was a Union soldier. And so she went out there and she said, Hubert was not at home because they were trying to kill him, you know, although he had 3 boys in the Union Army. And how they ever released him at that time, I'll never know. But that's what actually happened. And she said the only time that she ever told a lie was one time, I don't know whether it was the Bushwhackers or the Yankee soldiers came there asking for Grandpa. He was hiding in an old room that they wove cloth. And she told him she didn't know where he was. He wasn't at home. You know, he was hiding there, and he went on off. She lied about that. She always worried about lying, even to save her husband's life, you know. But she said to that young soldier, "Aren't you ashamed of yourself, young man? I'm just like a widow here. My children, that's all we have to eat. He said, don't you know you'll have to die someday? You'll have to get killed in the war in time." And he said, "I realize that, good woman. And I hope to meet you in a better world. But right now I'm very hungry and I must have these potatoes." He just kept on digging, you know.
I think I can remember the man Dave Perry. He lived out south of here near a place called Middleton. But anyway, as a Perry, if it wasn't Dave Perry, it's from that family, I'm quite sure. He was home, as was a common thing for the soldier during the Civil War days. he's home for a period of time, and he knew it was not safe for him to be there because someone might kill him, because to weaken the South, they'd quite often kill able-bodied men that were left at home, whether they were the right age to serve in the army or not. There may be a teenage boy they'd kill him sometimes. That had happened, but he realized he might be in trouble. He's home on this furlough, or this period of time that he spent with the family. He looked out the front of the house and saw some men coming galloping on their horses. Well, he knew if he crawled under the bed or went upstairs or went in any part of the house, he'd likely be located. He knew if he went out the back door, it'd be in view of these people. So he saw his sister's dress and bonnet hanging on the headboard of the bed. So he put them on as rapidly as he could and picked up the water bucket as though he planned to go to the spring for a bucket of water. He went to the spring, and the family followed him that far, but they didn't find him, but they did find the bucket, the bonnet, and the dress left at the spring. So they just assumed that he went over the hill. Now, another story that I believe this is one of grandmother's stories. A man was separated from his men, or the group he was with, and he was being chased across a field. And he knew that it meant that they were getting close enough that they'd like to shoot him soon. So he got to the far side of the field, he jumped over the fence and started waving his hands, said, come on men, pretending that the bushes and woods were full of soldiers. And he made such an impression on them that they turned their horses and went in the other direction. I thought that was one of the best stories that grandmother told. Well, the man was plowing corn, and so George, Bill Robinson and George Newberry were seen in that area, and they were supposed to been located at the end of the corn row when Marion Miller turned his mule around, or his horse, whichever he's plowing his corn. And I believe that the one of them, his nerve failed him a little bit. He couldn't pull his trigger when he planned to. And Newberry said to him, let a man have that gun that can use it, or let a man have the gun that can do the job. So he fired the gun, and it killed Marion Miller, according to the information that I have. And it is said that the ball was as big as the end of a man's thumb of that gun that he used for that purpose, and it hit the hame on the harness of the mule and split it open. And I'll close this story about this feud by telling what my grandmother said. My grandmother was thoroughly convinced that this is true. She said she'd always heard that where people would hang a man to a tree, the limb that they used to hang him would die soon after that. And she said she passed there. Of course, one of their trading centers was Osage, and they traveled by that spring or near that tree, and there was a dead limb, she said, in that tree. So I don't think anything I could have said to grandmother would have changed her mind about the dead limb in the tree. So that ends the story, George.
Well, my great-grandfather, Ben Hancock, when he come from Tennessee, he settled in Boone County, south of Harrison, about 5 miles, but of course Harrison wasn't there at that time. But anyway, that's where he first settled. He come into the country, of course, you might say with nothing, and he didn't have a place to live or anything until he built him a place. So he built him a log cabin, mows in it, and then of course the first thing he had to do was to go claim up some ground to raise food. So he went to clearing ground, making rails, fenced him a little place there to grow him some food, corn, what have you. So there was a rock, and that lay in there, a big flat stone, and he noticed that in particular when he started to move it, because it had a corn tassel cut on it. And he looked at that and got pretty well, how it was laying before he moved it. So he takes it out of the field, of course, throws it over in the corner of the fence. So after he gets the ground all cleaned up, and why, one day he was at the house, he seen someone down in the field, and he watched him a little while, and he seen that he was looking for something. He was looking around all over that field there. So after a while, he takes notion to go down to see what he was looking for. So he goes down. He seen it was an Indian, all right. And he asked him what he was looking for and if he could be of any help to him. So he told him, he says, when you cleaned this ground here, said, did you find a rock with a corn tassel cut on it? He says, I did. He said, do you know where it's at? He said, yes, sir. He says, it's down there in the corner of the fence. He says, could you get that rock and lay it back? He says, approximately like it was laying. He says, that's our guide. Says, that's all we got to go by to travel. And he says, yes. He says, I can get it. But he says, I think about just about like it was. So he goes and gets the rock, and they was talking. So this Indian, he told him, he says, if you white men knew what the Indians know, said you could shoe your horses with silver and gold. And he says, if you would let me blindfold you, he says, I would take you to this and show you this. Silver and gold. It's in a cave in a mountain back there. And he says, I would blindfold you. He says, I'd take the blindfold off when we get there and let you see it. Then I'll blindfold you and bring you back home. Of course, at that time, the white man and the Indian wasn't getting along too well because the white man had drove him out of the country. So my grandfather, he just didn't want to take the chance, so he wouldn't go with him. But he come on in toward the Sulphur, what we call the Sulphur Mountains south of Harrison, in there, into the mountains. And my grandfather then, of course, never did see him anymore, didn't know what happened to him, but if there was silver and gold in there, it's never been found yet. So you see, that's where he was at. He didn't know whether to believe the Indian or not, whether that was actually so about the silver and gold, or whether he was just telling this to get him to go with him, to get him off, to get rid of him, so he wouldn't go along. Yeah, when I was a kid, you see, back then they didn't have automobiles. I've got a witness to that. They didn't have the automobiles to be gone somewhere all the time. If they went anywhere, they had to go afoot. And through the mail, the only way we got the news. And so they just sit around and what they call the bedtime stories, Sometimes they get started telling old stories. But it's hard to remember all of them. But when I was younger, I had a memory like an elephant. Now I'm like a goose. I wake up in a new world every morning. So.
My first memory dates back to when I was 2.5, when an old gander whipped me. That's the first pain I can never remember. And I've never forgotten it yet, and I've never forgotten anything where somebody made me mad, sad, or happy. If you made me mad, I never forgot it, and I never forgave you. And I always tried to get even, and have, in a lot of ways. After the Civil War, the carpetbaggers moved in, and they were people that came in there with all their belongings in a carpet bag, and they made friends with the freed slaves and got elected to public office, and they were very vicious and mean, and everybody hated them. And then you had the Scalawags, a native, and those billies down there made them mighty miserable. There was a stave mill that moved in there, and took up a bunch of timber and land, and Grandpa claimed they got over on him, and they claimed they didn't. They went down and pitched themselves up some little log huts for their workers to live in. Grandpa tore them down with a broadaxe. They went to court, and the stave mill won. Well, he went down and drove some spikes in the middle of a stave so the equalizer wouldn't get hit. The equalizer equalized them, put them on a table, and they went back to the side sawyer and then to the sawyer. The sawyer was a boss, and he wanted to kill this sawyer. Well, when this stave saw hit this steel, It cut this Sawyer pretty badly, but it didn't kill him. Wasn't long till they found out about it and gave the old man 11 months and 29 days in the county road. Well, the damnedest noises you ever heard. Grandma, she was a-shouting. She was an old-time shouting Methodist. Ain't Martha Jane, she was a-crying. Ain't Elizabeth was a-crying. Ain't Joseph was a-crying. Just 14 kids was all. My dad was the baby. He was laughing. My Methodist preacher, Uncle Reuben, he was down hollering, God help, God help. Grandpa told him he'd be so mean that he'd be back in 3 months. They took him down there and he wouldn't work. Well, that's when they whipped you. Well, he still didn't work, and they put him in a sweat tank. That's tin, and out where you can't bend over, you can't do nothing, with a chain around your neck. Had a glass of water in your hand and a loaf of bread in the other hand, and you stayed there. You stayed there 3 days, and they took him out and put him to cooking. Well, old Bob Taylor was the governor, and he was an awful Democrat, and so was my grandpa. And this county judge, it was a Scalawag's son, and grandpa hated him. So they were getting ready for the governor to come out and look the place over one day and inspect it. And they told grandpa to make an Irish stew, and he did. And he cut up a little of this old-fashioned lye soap that's made out of grease and refuse and ashes. Lye, ash lye. And it has quite a purgative effect. Oh, it's harsh. He cut it up in this stew, not enough to ruin the stew, but just enough to put them to going. Wasn't long till everybody was in a trot. Well, there wasn't room enough in the outhouses for them, and it was just everywhere. And old Bob Taylor, he was right into it, too. And strangely enough, the only one that wasn't trotting was Grandpa, and he didn't eat any of the stew. They got after him about it, and he said that he did that just to get even with that scalawag. Old Bob Taylor thought that's the funniest thing he ever heard about. So he pardoned my grandpa and sent him home and took him with him around East Tennessee and was going to make up some of that stuff on Election Day to where those Republicans couldn't vote up. And said it tasted a lot better than calomel and did a lot better job. This was a candidate that was out candidating the country, and he swore it was true. And he stopped to candidate a man plowing a mule with a double shovel plow and a boy about 16 years of age. And while he was candidating him, he sent him to the house after a can of water. The kid come back without any water, says, Paul, there's a preacher at the house. The old man says, what kind was he? Says, I didn't find out. Why didn't you? Thought I'd better come tell you. Now, they used to treat those preachers there with all the charm in the world. Now, they got the best of everything. You get back to that house. If he's a holy roller, you get that money out of the top drawer. If he's a Methodist, you run everything that's got feathers on it clear back on the other side of the farm. But if he's an old hard-shelled primitive Baptist, you get right on your mammy's lap and you sit there till I get there, and don't you dare get off. We have a great variety of snakes up there in Carroll County, Arkansas. There we have the copperhead, we have the rattlesnake, different varieties, and the cottonmouth. They're all of the pit viper family. Then we have some this just old serpent type, like the chicken snake, the king snake, and then we have a hoop snake. And when he gets after you, he makes a hoop out of himself and starts rolling after you. And he's got a stinger in the end of his tail. And when he gets up close, he'll sting you with that stinger. That's the way he poisons you. Well, one old fellow up there ran from him and had a hoe, turned around and struck at the hoop snake with the hoe, killed the snake, but the snake in the meantime hit the handle of the hoe. And that hoe swelled up so big that evening he sawed it up and got 4 cords of wood out of it. Well, Uncle Cheyenne was an old rebel soldier that lived in Carroll County, Arkansas. And he was a great storyteller. He had a great imagination. No education, but still he was quite... But he didn't like for anybody to call him a liar. And he told about being at the Battle of Lookout Mountain, and he put buzzard wings on a buggy and flew out over the Yankees with a bunch of rocks. And he was up so high they couldn't get to him with the mini balls. And he just rocked the thunder out of them and flew back and lit, and every day there, that's the way he put them in high, was by throwing rocks on them. But he was up so high they couldn't get to him. Then he told another one about he cut down on the Yankee with an old muzzleloader, and the Yankee cut down on him. The 2 bullets hit each other in there, and they'd push each other. One would push a while, and the other one would back up, and the other one would push a while, and the other one would back up. And they were still pushing when he left there. He told another one at the Battle of Shiloh that he got up against a house, and you couldn't put your thumb in a place without a bullet hole being there. One of the boys says, "How did it keep from hitting you?" Says, "I was too fast for him." Then there's one fellow there I shall call Roy, is about 16 years of age, sitting there listening to him. Says, "That may be the truth, but it sounds like a damn big old lie to me." The old man whacked at him. This really happened, over the head with his stick. Says, "What are you calling me a liar before these young'uns for? Why would I be telling it if it twarn't the truth?" Now that happened. He smacked him with it. "Twarn't the truth." That happened.
Well, I'll tell you, I left home when I was a kid, and I began to travel, and I began to go here, and I began to go there, and in different states. And I was in Kansas working, and boy, I'd taken a beating. Arkansas at that time was a backwoods place in 48 states, and everybody razzed everybody about being from Arkansas, and man, they poured it on me. And one day, the guy asked me, he said, "You from Arkansas?" I said, "Yeah, I'm from Arkansas." He said, "Do you have any fools back there?" I said, yeah. I said, "We've got quite a few of them. But I said, there's one thing I found out about it. They don't go in droves like they do up here." Well, one time I lived in Arizona, and I was a contractor there. And I'd go to the lumber yard every morning to pick up material to work with, and there was 2 Texans there. And I went in one morning, and they was telling about how big of watermelons that they grew in Texas. And I sat and listened to them a few minutes, and I said, finally I said, "Well, just how big is them watermelons that you guys grow out there?" "Oh," they said, "they're big." Said they weigh 40 and 50 pounds. I said, "Man, would you call that a big watermelon?" I said, "Where I came from, there was a little town by the name of Cave City. And I said, there was a cave there, and it ran in under the main street in this town. And I said, every 4th of July, they had a picnic there. And I said, there was a man out west of Cave City by the name of Black Crow that raised watermelons. And he always brought them in for the 4th of July picnic. And I said, we didn't have no trucks in to haul the watermelons in. We had to haul them with a wagon and team. And I said, he'd always call for help to load his watermelons the 3rd day of July. And I said, they went out there the 3rd day of July and started to load those watermelons. And I said, they had to roll them up on skids. And I said, they got the first one in the wagon with all ease and started up with the second one. And they lost control of it. And I said, that watermelon fell and bursted, and the juice of it drowned 2 men before they could get out of the way of it. I was down in Louisiana. I went off down through there, and I hired out to a farmer down there to work. I'd been there about 2 or 3 days, and he told me, he said, I want you to go out the back of the pasture and drive my cow up, my milk cow. He said, they'll be right in the back of the pasture. And I said, well, how many cows you got over? I always said I've got 15 or 20, but said I only want her. The milk cow drove up, said, you'll know her, she's got a bell on. I said, all right. So I walked back there, and I walked about a half a mile, and I stopped and listened, and I couldn't hear the bell ringing. And I went on back, and that's while I spotted a bunch of cattle back over there under some shade trees. So I took out and went over there, and before I got there, the bell quit ringing. And I walked on up them cattle. I couldn't see no cow with a bell on. I couldn't hear it ringing. That's while this bell started ringing over to one side, and I looked around there, and the mosquitoes had ate this cow up and was standing there ringing the bell for the calf to come. And I was up in Tennessee and was roaming around up there and was riding a freight train, and I got kicked off and started down the highway, and boy, it was hot. And I was right down in a valley, and I finally got so hot I couldn't hardly see, and I decided I'd just go outside the road and sit down. And there was a log there, and I went out and sat down on this log, and I was cooling off in the shade, and all at once I heard something coming down off that hillside. Boy, was just tearing that timber down, seemed me like. And I I didn't know what it was. I couldn't figure out whether it was a bear or a mountain lion. So I crawled in behind this log and hid, and about 3 minutes here come a woman off the side of that hill. Boy, she was really running for dear life, and she went right down that road, never looked around, never said a word. I got up and watched her till she got nearly out of sight, and about that time I heard something else coming down off that hill. Boy, I couldn't figure out what is going on. So about that time, here come a man, a boy about 22 or 3 years old, and he run out there and he stopped and he said, "Have you seen anything of my mother going down through here?" And I said, "Well, I don't know whether it's your mother, but there was a woman come down through here just as hard as she could go and was going down that road." He said that was her. He said she thinks she's going to wean me, but she ain't about to. Oh, this guy, he had a family and he wouldn't work. And his wife and kids had to do all the work, and he just wouldn't work. He said, no, he wouldn't work. He wasn't able to work. Well, the neighbors around would give him stuff and help him out, and finally they got tired of it. And they told him, said, "Now, John, we've been helping you for about 2 or 3 years now. Now, we're getting tired of it. Now, you're going to either go to work or we're going to bury you alive." So it went on for about a month. One day, this guy was coming from town. They met a wagon with a casket in it. And he stopped them and he said, "Well, who's dead?" Oh, they said, "Ain't nobody dead," but said, "You know, John, he won't work and support his family, and we've been telling him what we're going to do," and said, "We're going to bury him alive." Oh, he said, "I wouldn't do that if I were you guys." He said, "I've got some corn at the house, and I'll give him, and he can take it to the mill and have it ground, and he'll have some cornbread, and somebody will give him milk." This John, he raised up in the casket. He said, "Is that corn shelled?" And this guy said, "No." He said, "Well, drive on." Yeah, they had a fox hunt. And they come from Tennessee and Missouri and Kentucky and everywhere up above Evening Shade there. And there was a doctor up there by the name of Dr. Tibbles, and he had a couple of fox dogs, and they were really good dogs. Well, everybody was bragging on their dogs and telling how fast they was, and Dr. Tibbles sat there. He never said nothing. So finally some guy said, "Doc," said, "you've never said nothing about your dogs." Said, how fast is your dogs?" "Oh," he said, "these dogs that I've got now is good dogs, but," he said, "they're nothing like I used to have." He said, "I had a dog one time that was the fastest dog I ever seen." He said, "We was out on a fox hunt, and he jumped this fox, and he said he run it for about a half a mile, and he was just fixing to catch that fox, and he said he slowed down just a little to grab the fox, and the fox whirled and went to the left right quick, and he said the dog was going so fast that he couldn't stop. And he said there was a steel post there, and he hit that steel post and said just split that dog right half in two. And he said I happened to be standing out there about 10 steps, and he said I run and grabbed that dog and sewed him back up. And he said I put 2 feet up and 2 feet down. And he said that dog would outrun every dog in the country. He'd run a while on 2 feet and flop over on the other 2 feet. And he said he outrun every dog in that whole country. This guy advertised a bear dog. Well, this guy said, I want to go see that dog. So in 2 or 3 days, he got in his car and he went over there and asked this guy, I said, "Are you the guy that's got this bear dog advertised?" "Yeah." He said, "I've got this bear dog advertised." He said, "Well, where is it?" "Oh," he said, "It's out here around the house or running around somewhere." And he went out there and he said, "There he is, right there." And that guy said, "That's a bear dog." Said, "That's a little old bench-legged feist." "Oh, no, feller," he said, you don't know that dog." He said, "Like I do." He said, "That's a bear dog." "Oh, no," he said, "Man, that dog's too little. He's not a bear dog." That guy said, "Feller, you don't understand. That's a bear dog." But said, "We've got him screwed down to a rabbit dog now."
one spring I got home from being off on the road singing somewhere. I do a little of that once in a while. And had some cows fixing to calve. So I saddled up and rode over on the F to see how everything was going. Well, I did this about every day. We call that Marlboroing around, you know. And didn't find nothing spectacular happening. I started back for the house, and the gate's right on the main county road that runs through there. And just before I opened the gate and started home, off to one side, laying alongside the fence, sure enough, here's a cow down having a calf. The first thing you see is the front feet coming out, if everything's right. I saw the feet coming, and I looked at them again, and they was upside down, so it wasn't the front feet, it was the back feet. We're having a breech birth. Well, once you get the calf started out of there in a breech birth, you can't allow it to get stuck about halfway out because the umbilical cord breaks and the calf smothers because his head's inside. But if you get them right on out of there, why, generally they're all right. And this cow looked like she'd give up. She wasn't trying no more. She was just laying there. So I walked up real gentle behind her and sat down, got a hold of them blame back feet, put my feet against her rear end, and pulled just as hard as I could. I ain't all that stout, and I'm not making no progress, so tried again a time or two, and the calf just didn't budge, and the cow ain't helping none. I heard a car stop right alongside of me, and a great big old stout college-looking boy jumped out of the car and walked over to the gate where I had my horse tied up. He's admiring the horse and looking at the saddle and gazing away at all that stuff. Then he looked to the right and saw me sitting over there behind this cow, and he says, "Do you need help?" And I said, "Boy, I sure do." He says, "Well, I'll help you," and he puts one finger on a fence post and hopped right over the fence, comes striding up to me. He says, "What are you doing?" I says, "Well, I'm trying to pull this calf out of here." And I says, "You can sit down here and help me." He said, "No, let me do it alone." And he plops down there and grabbed them old hind feet and reared back. Boy, he was big and stout, and that calf come right out of there and sloop. And I says, "Okay, let's back up and leave the cow alone for a little bit now. Just leave her be." So I said, "Okay." And we walked off a little ways there. I says, "I'm sure glad you showed up just when you did." I says, "I just wasn't making no progress, and you're big and stout, and you sure got that calf out of there." I said, "I'd like to pay you something for your help." And of course, in Arkansas, people don't hardly ever charge for just a little neighborly help, although I didn't know at all who he was. He says, "Oh, no, I wouldn't take any pay for it." He says, "There's one thing you can do, though." I says, "What's that?" He says, "Well, you can tell me how fast that calf was running when it hit that cow."
Well, my Uncle Will always walked with a wry neck. He walked with his head turned a little to this side. And on the night that I sat before the fireplace with him and he's telling me stories, he told me about his trip to the moon. Now, we think the astronauts have done a great job, and they have. But there's a lot of people don't realize that my Uncle Will had a trip to the moon back as early as before 1903, because he told me about it that night. He said that one day he went hunting. He had an old mare that was a little bit swayback that he took along with him to carry the game. Well, he went along, and old Betsy, his rifle, was loaded, and he saw a quail going across the road. He up with old Betsy and shot the quail. He picked up the quail, hung it on the saddle, went along a little further, and he'd hit a rabbit. He put that on, and so on until he finally came to where he had hit a deer, and he slung that on, and the old mare's back just couldn't carry the load, so it caved in on him. Well, he didn't know what to do. So finally there was a slippery elm tree there, and he cut a good strong switch from it, whittled it down to make a keystone-like shape, slipped that down between the vertebrae that were caved in, and that enabled the old mare to carry the load. He got in home, unloaded his game, fed the mare, and dressed out his game. The next morning, he got up and looked over toward the barn. And by golly, there was a tree growing right up to the roof of the barn, way up there. And he got to thinking about it. I wonder what he could see if he climbed that tree and looked over the hill. So he climbed up. This is early in the morning. He climbed up the tree, and as he got up as high as he could go, here came the moon along with that horn just right. He caught a hold of it and slipped right over on the moon. With that, the moon had moved on, and there he was up on the moon and no way down. Well, there's some little animals up there that he found he could skin them out, eat the meat, and save the hides and tack one to the other. And he did until he thought he had enough to reach the ground. So he climbed down and he got down there, he found he'd misjudged. He didn't have quite as many as he needed. But he said, well, I'm going to jump. He jumped down, he hit head first, and he went right in up to his shoulders. Well, he twisted and he squirmed. Finally, he pulled his head right off. He went up the house, picked up a pickaxe, dug his head out, and he put it back on. And ever after that, why, he walked with a wry neck.
Hudson, do you remember the Hudson that killed the panther?
Hudson?
The Hudson that
Oh,
killed
you want
the
that one? All right, I'll tell you that one.
Tell us that one.
Now, Uncle Sammy had his young son, Columbus, with him one Sunday morning when he went to cut a bee tree. And while they were cutting the tree, while the two bull panthers fighting up at the head of the ravine. After a while, one of these panthers won the fight, and he came down the other side of the ravine from where Uncle Sammy and Columbus were, and he's switching his tail, just looking for something else to fight. Well, as he went by, Columbus picked up a chip and threw it at the panther. And the panther, instead of running, he came charging in. Well, Uncle Sammy struck at him with his axe. The axe flew out of his hand, and the panther landed with both paws over his shoulders, clawing with his forepaws and ripping the hide right down to the bone, peeling the periosteum off of the ribs. Well, Uncle Sammy rammed his left fist right down the panther's throat, and with the hair shut off, and Uncle Sammy pounding him over the heart, Columbus gave him his knife, and he stabbed the panther and dispensed it that way. Now, he was laid up for quite a while with the injuries he got during this, and when he first got out in the springtime, he went down to the field to see what the boys had been doing about the crop. And dogs started something up the corn row. And he saw that it was coming right down toward him, and he squatted down there. He squatted down, and here came a wildcat. He caught him, and then there was spitting and a snarling, and finally he got the fellow under control, and he turned to a fellow that was with him by the name of Henderson. He says, "Henderson, take my leather galluses off and tie this critter up. Why don't you lend a hand?" Uncle Sammy, I couldn't see any place to take a hold. Well, I'll tell you, you know, we people down here in the hills, we're not accustomed to using modern means of transportation. We ride in log wagons and hacks and whatnot. And it came time when I was going to be leaving here, and I'd never ridden a train. And so I got on the train and riding along, and the porter come through, and he was brushing the people down and polishing their shoes. And I got to thinking about and I wondered how much of a tip I was going to give that fellow. And so when he came by, I said, "Say, Sam, what's the average tip you get?" I don't know, about $1. About $1, huh? Yes, about $1. Well, went on, came to the place where I was going to get off, and he came by and he brushed me down, took my luggage out, set it down with the other, and I went out to pick up my bag. I put $1 in his hand and turned to go away. He said, "Hey, boss, you know, you're the first one to come up to the average." I'm going to tell him one more story.
All right, you come right on and tell
You know, Uncle Will did have a running contest with Lying Frank Carlton. And there'd always be something that they were pulling on each other. So the boys around the square and the post office and the bank decided it'd be a nice thing and be very interesting to get those two men together and let them have a contest to see which could tell the biggest lie. So they finally got them to agree to meet and have the contest. And they met on the north side of the square at the post office, which was on the north side then. And there was a sheriff there, and the postmaster and all the officers from the courthouse and the bank were all lined up there, and Mr. Carlton was there, and Uncle Will didn't show up. So they began to get a little uneasy. And finally they looked up the street, and there coming down by the bank was Uncle Will, and he's walking, swinging his arms and stepping out like he's walking for wages. He came right down by where they were, walked right on by, didn't even look at them, and he got just by them. Hey, Will, aren't you going to stop? He turned around and looked at him. "Did you hear that Bud Riggs fell in his Frank Carlton?" He said, "Oh my God, he's one of my best friends." He lit out running, ran all the way down Stringtown, got down there, Bud Riggs sitting on the porch whittling. That ended the contest.
Well met, said he. Well met, said she. For I have come to these hilly lands, and so for the sake of thee. For I have come to these hilly lands, and so for the sake of thee. Well, you have married a house carpenter, and a fine-looking gentleman you see. If you will leave the house carpenter and run away with me, I'll take you to the place where the grass grows tall, to the rivers of Sweet Willie. She picked it up, her darling little babe, and kisses gave it 3, saying, "Stay at home, you darling little babe, for to keep your papa company." Saying, "Stay at home, you darling little babe, for to keep your papa company." And away went the sailor with the house carpenter to the rivers of Sweet Willie. They hadn't been on the sea 2 weeks. I'm sure it was not 3.
till this young lady were found weeping. She was weeping most bitterly, till this young lady were found weeping. She was weeping most bitterly. Oh, is it for my gold you weep? Or is it for my store? Or is it for that house carpenter that you never will see anymore? Or is it for your house carpenter that you never will see anymore? It is not for your gold I weep, nor it is not for your store. It's only for that darling little babe that I never will see anymore. It's only for that darling little babe that I never will see anymore. What is those banks I see that look as white as snow? It is the banks of heaven I know, where my darling little babe shall go. It is the banks of heaven I know, where my darling little babe shall go. Oh, what is those banks I see that look so dark and low? It is the banks of hell I know, where you and I must go. It is the banks of hell I know, where you and I must go. They had not been on the sea 3 weeks. I'm sure it was not 4, until from the deck there sprung a leak, and their voices wasn't heard anymore. Until from the deck there sprung a leak, and their voices wasn't heard anymore. Oh, cursed be the sea sailing men. Oh, cursed be their life, for robbing of little house carpenter and stealing away their wives. For robbing of little house carpenter and stealing away their wives. Two little lads, they had been friends ever since childhood day, until one day they met a fair maid and an angel with charming ways. They both fell in love, each one tried to win this little maiden fair. But sad was the day when Marchie did say she'd turn Tom away in despair. Time rolled on, Jack won her heart, just as the story goes, until one day in the middle of May, they both at the altar made one. Rush on honeymoon, all return soon. Jack met poor Tom that day, saying, "Come, my brave lad, and don't look so sad." To Tom, to Jack did say, "Jack, how I envy you, I envy you, Jack, yes I do. I know you've won her heart in hand, and I hope she'll be true to you. I wish you much joy, oh boy, I'll give you my hand on it too. Go, Jack, I'm far glad, for she loves you, my lad. But I envy you, Jack, yes I do. They both lived happy, both Jack and his wife, until one fatal day, till sickness came along and Jack wasn't strong and had taken his dear life away. Oh, the wife at the grave, oh, how she did rave, for she knew not what to do, till Tom came along with a voice clear and strong, said, sweetheart, I'll marry you. Time rolled on after the wed, they now had children 4. Baby cries at night while Papa and Mama fights, and Papa sleeps up on the floor. Tom looks back and he thanks up for Jack, while passing his grave each day. The tears he shed to his wife, he said, they've taken poor Jack away. Jack, how I envy you. Well, I envy you, Jack, yes I do. I know you are happy now. I'd like to change places with you. I know you are happy. I once was happy too. Though Jack, you're far away, I'll be with you someday. But I envy you, Jack, yes I do. One awful dark and stormy night, I heard, I saw an awful sight. The lightning flashed, the thunder rolled around my aching, weary soul. I saw a crowd of dying drunkards go. This is my home, no tongue can tell the horrible sight of a drunkard's hell. The next saloon I staggered past, I thought I'd take a sociable glass. Every time I'd think it well, I'd think about that drunkard's hell. I dashed it down and left that place. I thought I'd seek redeeming grace, but every time I think it well, I think about that drunkard's hell. I started home to change my life, see my own elected wife. I found her weeping by our bed because our little babe was dead. I said, dear wife, don't mourn and weep. Our little babe is just asleep. Its little soul has passed away to dwell with Christ through an endless day. I'd taken her by her small white hand. She was so weak she could not stand. We then knelt down to say a prayer that God might own and save us there. Oh, girls, turn down the drinking man while yet you may, while yet you can. There's many a girl who's sad today because in poverty she lives and stays. Oh, Johnny dear, don't you go down in the meadow far to mow. Right-ting-ling day, right-ting-ling day, right-ting-ling-ling-ling, ting-ling day. Oh, Molly dear, Don't you know father's meadow, it must be mowed right ting-a-ling-day, ting-a-ling-day, right ting-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling, ting-a-ling-day. He hadn't mowed around the field, a rattlesnake bit him on the heel, right ting-a-ling-day, right ting-a-ling-day, ting-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling, ting-a-ling-day. They carried him home to Molly dear, don't you know she felt right queer, right ting-a-day, right ting-a-ling-day, right ting-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling, ting-a-ling-day. Well, oh, my friends, and warn and take, never get bit by a rattle or snake, right ting-a-ling-day, ting-a-ling-day, right ting-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling, ting-a-ling-day. If you do, I'm telling you, a lot of trouble you'll get into. Ting-a-ling-day, right ting-a-ling-day, right ting-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling, ting-a-ling-day. Remember well and bear in mind that a true friend is hard to find. And when you find that one is true, change not the old one for the new. Go bring me back my blue-eyed boy, go bring my darling back to me. Go bring me back my blue-eyed boy, and happy will I ever be. Oh, I love him once and I love him still. I love him now and always will. His loving thoughts, his win and ways are in my heart and there it stays. Oh, who on earth can be my friend? And who can hold my little white hand? And who can kiss my ruby lips when I am in a distant land? Oh, Mama, she can be my friend, and Papa can hold my little white hand, and you may kiss my ruby lips when I am in a distant land. Your love is like a little bird that flies from tree unto tree, for the loss of one and a gain of two, and that is why I married you.
Willie Moore was a young man, 21. He courted a maiden fair. Her eyes were as bright as a diamond at night, and wavy black was her hair. He courted her both night and day, till marry they both did agree. But when he went to get her father's consent, he said that it never could be. But I love Willie Moore, she said to herself. Love him far dearer than life. and I'd much rather die than to bear the thought I never can be his wife. It was about the 10th of May, a time I remember so well. It was on that very night sweet Anna disappeared. Where she went, nobody could tell. They searched for her both near and far, in the country all around, and in the little brook that flowed nearby, the body of sweet Anna was found. They carried her body to her mother's room, dressed it in a shroud of snowy white, and in a little grave on the green hillside, the body of sweet Anna lies quiet. But I love Willie more, she said to herself. Love him far dearer than life, and I'd much rather die than to bear the thought I never can be his wife. Willie Moore seldom spoke to his friends, they say. From them he soon did part. Last was heard of him, he was in Monterey, where he died of a broken heart. But I love Willie more, she said to herself. Love him far dearer than life, and I'd much rather die than to bear the thought I never can be his wife. I knew a rich old lady in London, she did dwell. She loved her husband dearly, but other men twice as well. Sing penny a wink she ran off, sing penny a wink she roamed. She went to the doctor in hopes that she might find some kind of a medicine to make her husband blind. Sing penny a wink she ran off, sing penny a wink she roamed. She gave him 2 marrow bones and told him to suck them all. And then he said, my dear little wife, I cannot see you at all. Sing penny a wink she ran off, sing penny a wink she roamed. I think I'm gonna drown myself if I only knew the way. Here, let me take you by the hand as you might go astray. Sing penny a wink she ran off, sing penny a wink she roamed. Well, she walked on the banks and he walked on the shore, and he said, my dear little wife, you'll have to push me o'er. Sing penny a wink, she ran off, sing penny a wink, she roamed. She took a few steps backwards and run to push him in. He just stepped to one side and let her tumble in. Sing penny a wink, she ran off, sing penny a wink, she roamed. Now she began to holler and she began to squall, but he said, my dear little wife, I cannot see you at all. Sing penny a wink, she ran off, sing penny a wink, she roamed. The old man, being good-natured and feared that she might swim, he run and cut a big long pole and pushed her further in. Sing penny a wink, she ran off, sing penny a wink, she roamed. Now my little song is over and I won't sing it no more, but wasn't she a blamed old fool for not swimming to the shore? It's all out on the old railroad, it's all out on the sea. It's all out on the old railroad as far as I can see. Swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. Wished I had a big white horse, corn to feed him on. Pretty little girl, stay at home and feed him when I'm gone. Swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. If I had no horse to ride, I'd be down a-crawling up and down this rocky road, looking for my darling. Swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. Hardest work I ever done was working on the farm. Easiest work I ever done was swing my true love's arm. Swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. Some will come on Saturday night, some will come on Sunday. If you give them half a chance, they'll be back on Monday. Swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. Wished I had a needle and thread as fine as I could sew. I'd sew the girls to my coattail and round the room I'd go. Swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee.
I was bound in Boston City, boys, a city you all know well, raised up by honest parents. The truth to you I'll tell, raised up by honest parents, raised up most tenderly, till I became a sporting young man at the age of 23. My character was taken and I was sent to jail. All the boys, they found it all in vain to get me out on bail. The jury found clerk, he wrote it down. Oh, the judge, he passed a sentence. You're bound for that little rock town. They put me aboard this eastbound train one cold December day, and every station I'd pass through, I could hear those people say, there goes that Boston with Armstrong chains, he's bound down for some bad climb or other, to be sent to that little rock town. There lives a girl in Louisville, a girl that I love well. And if ever I gain my liberty, alone with her I'll dwell. If ever I gain my liberty, bad company I will shun. Likewise night walk and gambling, and also drinking rum. You who have your liberty, please keep it while you can, and don't run around with boys at night and break the laws of man. For if you do, you surely will find yourself like me, just serving out 23 long years in the state penitentiary. It was on one Friday morning, I bid New Orleans adieu. I made my way to Jackson, where I was forced to go, mid swamps and alligators. I made my weary way. It was there I met that Creole girl on a Lincoln plunger train. I said unto that Creole girl, my money to me is no good. It wasn't for the alligator. I'd sleep out in the woods. Oh, welcome, welcome, stranger. Although our home is plain, we'll never turn a stranger down on a Lincoln plunger train. She took me to her mother's house. She treated me quite well. Her hair and golden ringlets hung down her shoulders fell. I tried to win her beauty, but I found it all in vain. To win the beauty of a Creole girl on a Lincoln plunger train. I asked her if she'd marry me. She said it could not be. that you have a lover, and he was far off sea. Oh yes, you have a lover, and true you shall remain until he returns to you again on a Lincoln plunger train. I said unto that Creole girl, your face I shall see no more. I'll never forget the kindness, but the cottage by the shore, when the moonbeam sun shall circle, and the sparkling drinks I'll drink. I'll drink success to that Creole girl on a Lincoln plunger train.
In the shady dell, down by a flowing stream, dwells sweet Nola Shannon, she is nature's queen. All the boys and girls around the neighborhood fall in love with Nola just because she's good. Sweet Nola Shannon adore. Each time I see her, I love her more. Bright as the sunshine, she's the girl I prefer. She loves me truly, and I do love her. Every Sunday Eve at the hour of 8, Nola comes to greet me at the garden gate. Arm in arm we stroll through the shady dell. Twinkling stars may watch us kiss, but never tell. Sweet Nola Shannon adore. Each time I see her, I love her more. Bright as the sunshine, she's the girl I prefer. She loves me truly, and I do love her. Oh, I wish I was a little bird. I'd fly to the top of a tree. I'd fly and sing a sad little song. I can't stay here by myself. Oh, I can't stay here by myself. I can't stay here by myself. I'd fly and sing a sad little song. I can't stay here by myself. Once I had plenty money, my friends all around would stand. Now my pockets are empty and I have not a friend in the land. Farewell, farewell, corn whiskey, farewell, peach brandy too. You robbed my pockets of silver and I have no use for you. Oh, I wish I was a little fish. I'd swim to the bottom of the sea. I'd swim and sing a sad little song. I can't stay here by myself. Oh, I can't stay here by myself. I can't stay here by myself. I'd swim and sing a sad little song. I can't stay here by myself. The wedding bells were ringing on a moonlit winter's night. The church was decorated, all within was gay and light. A woman with her baby came and saw the lights aglow. She thought of how the same bells chimed for her 2 years ago. While the wedding bells were ringing, while the bride and groom were there, walking up the aisle together, while the organ filled in air, singing songs of fond affection, vowing never more to part. Another fatal wedding, just another broken heart. I'd like to be admitted, sir, she told the sexton old, just for the sake of baby, to protect him from the cold. He told her that the wedding there was for the rich and grand, and with the eager watching ones outside she'd have to stand. Once more she begged the sexton old to let her step inside. For baby's sake you may come in, the gray-haired man replied. Does anyone know a reason why this couple should not wed? Speak now or forever hold your peace, the preacher said. I must object, the woman cried in a voice so meek and mild. The bridegroom is my husband, and this is their little child. What proof have you? The preacher said. My baby, sir, she cried. She raised the babe and knelt to pray, for the little one had died. The parents of the bride then took the outcast by the arm. They said, we'll care for you through life, you saved our child from harm. The parents' bride and the outcast wife in a carriage drove away. The bridegroom died by his own hand before the dawn of day. The wedding feast was fed that night, 2 graves were made next day. In one the little baby, in the other its father lay. This story often has been told by farsighted warm and bright, of a bridegroom bride, an outcast wife, and a fatal wedding night. Well, I went out to a big crap game, was against my will, bet all my money except one greenback dollar bill. Was $100 on the table, and the feelings they were high. Just then a cop came through the door, and I got mine. I got mine, boys, I got mine. I grabbed that $100, for the window I did climb. For a while was wearing good clothes, living on chicken and wine. Was a leader in society when I got mine. Well, I went into a big cafe, I went in there to dine. I only had 15 cents, but was full of good white wine. I ate everything on the table, I was feeling mighty fine. And I handed over that 15 cents and I got mine. I got mine, boys, I got mine. They used me for a football, at kicking they was fine. They kicked me through the window, I got there just in time. A policeman took me to the judge and I got mine. Well, I went to get some chicken, the night was very fine. I found them roosting very high, and for them I did climb. A bulldog came prowling round, he got there just in time. He got me by the seat of the pants, and he got mine. He got mine, boy, he got mine. The rascal took my breeches, he did it very fine. I went home in a barrel, I got there just in time. I used some Dr. Brown sapper, he got mine.